And we're live. Welcome back. Season 4, Episode 5 of Inside the Labyrinth Podcast. I'm ready. It's been a while. Got a great guest today. Very excited. Same sport that I just started. She's definitely much stronger than me, so I can't wait to learn.
Oh, you didn't tell me that you just started strongman.
Yeah, back in December, January. Oh, she's gonna walk off. She's walking off the show. Before we introduce her, as you guys already heard, I'm gonna kick it over to my man, the one and only, the Jumpman Jay.
Hey, it's Jumpman Jay. I'm here with my boy Frankie V, Inside the Labyrinth Podcast. It's been quite the journey. We've had some phenomenal guests, and I'm always excited for the guests that Frankie manages to get. So, as you guys know, Frankie's like the booking agent of the podcast, and he's got star-like quality when it comes to booking talent. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Frankie bring in the guest.
Starlight, I like that. I just finished The Boys season 2. Highly recommend The Boys. Great show.
Yeah, I'm going to start it.
So, episode 5. Welcome, Liefia Ingalls. How you doing? Thanks for coming on the show. And how are you doing right now? Kind of where your feet are, and how's today treating you?
I'm doing pretty okay. I think, like a lot of people, have been through a lot of interesting emotions in recent weeks and months, but I'm kind of feeling like coming back into the light, coming back into myself, and feeling pretty good. Today's a pretty nice day so far. It's early for me. It just started.
Well, good morning. Thank you for hopping on. We appreciate it. So we're going to kick off of kind of how Liefia was in high school. Did she have fun? Any sports? Was she lifting? And kind of how was your high school experience overall? Good, bad, kind of eh?
High school experience overall, definitely not good. I wasn't someone who really enjoyed socializing in high school. I was definitely not what I would consider like popular or even like really social. I didn't play any sports. That one's always a surprise. I didn't play any sports as a kid. Didn't really get into it. For a lot of different reasons. In high school, I started to sort of take an interest in sports, but at that point it was like too late. It was too late to like try to become an athlete, trying to compete or participate in sports in high school. Most athletes were already like at a certain level. So it's not really something that I could get into. So I think I started my first like interest in the gym when I was probably 14. So probably around my freshman year in high school.
Okay.
But it was definitely not really like athletically minded. At this time, I had no idea I was going to like be a lifter or an athlete of any kind. I got into lifting in the gym just because, because every other, teenage girl, I was like really insecure about my body. And I thought I needed to like, work out and try to be skinny and stuff. So I started going to the gym. And when I did go to the gym, the only thing I really liked doing was lifting weights. And definitely at that point was still like in my mind, I wasn't supposed to, right? Like I wasn't supposed to lift weights because this idea that like, if I lift weights, I'm just going to like turn into a big jacked bulky dude and be hideous as a teenage girl. Yeah. So I definitely think that's maybe like where it started, like my interest and enjoyment of doing it. And I really, I liked lifting, but I was weird about it because like, even then I remember I only did like legs and like certain groups because like I have wide shoulders, right? And I was like insecure about like my shoulders are wide. So I was like, well, I don't want them to get bigger. So I like never did any arm movements or anything because I was like afraid. But this was also like, I wasn't like super consistent. It was just probably where like the idea for lifting and enjoying it and the idea that like, I liked resistance training and I liked feeling strong. But I never got into it consistently, really actually until after college.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so late?
Mostly just because that was when I finally got to a point where it was something I actually like wanted to do consistently. So, I mean, since we're probably kind of going there anyways, like my personal life, my home life was really chaotic when I was young. So I didn't really get a lot of, I didn't really get the opportunity to sort of like focus on something that I wanted to do for myself and focus on doing something consistently until I was away. And most of my
Gotcha.
college years were, I was, my academic load was pretty high. And then I was working like almost full time the whole time I was in college. So it was just something at the time where I was like, that'll be really cool, but like, I don't have the time right now. I'll get into it later.
Gotcha. Would you what college did you go to, and what was your major?
I went to UC Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay.
And which was very nice, very nice. And I majored in biopsychology.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I can understand that academic workload being a little intense.
Yeah. And in retrospect, knowing what I know now about what lifting does for me and not just like structure wise, but also in terms of, stress release and feeling good. Like I wish I would have known that sooner, but I would have probably done it, and it probably would have helped me with all of those things. But at the time in my younger years, I was like, I'm too stressed. I'm too busy. I don't have time for that stuff right now.
Yeah, and that definitely would have helped out. That it would have helped the stress mitigation. It's actually funny that you bring that up. So now you're in college, right? And you have this crazy workload. When did you figure out that it was something like lifting was something that you wanted to be a staple in your life? At what point did that light bulb go off?
So there was probably, I don't know, there was probably a few moments that came together. And actually, I think that that's interesting because, and not that everyone has a different story, but my experience, most people have like some experience with athletics, some experience with lifting, and they just like it and it's cool and they want to be strong and don't really learn about like the health benefits or, mental health benefits until later.
Later, yeah.
But that was actually, so, not that I wasn't interested in lifting or athletic stuff. I just didn't really do it that much. But in school, the stuff that I studied, so biopsychology is psychology, but it's from the biological perspective, like studying what, what is happening in your systems that corresponds with certain behaviors. So in my nerdy pocket, I was learning. So I was like learning this stuff in school about how physical activity, but specifically resistance training, was responsible for all of these like neurological adaptations and things that basically make you more effective and smarter in a way, right? So I'm learning about that from the book aspect, and I'm like, oh wow, like this stuff is really great. I really need to do this. Like I really need to start doing this. Like it's actually really going to be great for my brain,
Mm-hmm.
So in a really nerdy and roundabout way, I was learning about those aspects from like an academic perspective. And I was like, okay, I need to like make time for this and actually like do it. So I had started going to the gym. We had like a really nice gym at the university. So like I would go there and use it when I could and lift. But again, I wasn't really like competitive. I wasn't really consistent. I didn't really know where I was progressing. And then once I finished college, I joined a CrossFit gym.
What CrossFit gym?
I don't even know if it's still around. It was called Aero CrossFit.
Aero CrossFit. Okay.
So it's a smaller CrossFit gym in Southern California near LA. And so I joined a CrossFit gym, and that was sort of my like first introduction into like lifting culture. And which, we could laugh or argue about whether or not CrossFit counts as lifting culture now, but at the time that was it.
It counts. It counts. You got to give us a little credit.
It's all in fun. No, I gave you guys lots of credit because and that was my introduction. So CrossFit was where I got introduced to all the barbell lifts and Olympic lifting and eventually strongman. So once I started once I joined that gym, I actually started training consistently. That was the first time I was like, in the gym multiple times a week and actually getting to a point where I could like see my strength progress. And once I got into that after a few months, like that's when it really bit. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. Cause I just started to notice like, Like I just loved feeling strong. I loved how awesome it made me feel. It made me feel like I could do anything else.
Now, I just because you have some like legit numbers. Did you always have like a good strength baseline, or was that something that just kind of came with being in the gym and just consistency? Because some people can just walk in and have it, like some people are just naturally strong. Like I don't know if you were a child picking up like little Tonka trucks or something, but most people who are strong have been strong their whole life. Then when they start to hone in on having like a program and then consistency, then all of a sudden the gains go through the roof.
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. I definitely have, a lot of the peak numbers that I reach, like I have to get there through training. Like my base level of strength, like without training, there's a big difference. Like I'm a really big peaker when it comes to competing and stuff like that. But now in retrospect, knowing what I know, I definitely probably have a little bit of a natural advantage as well, because when I first started lifting, I was like, oh, is this how you do it? And of course my numbers weren't really great, but within only like a few months of training, I was getting numbers that are not amazing, but people are like, okay, that's pretty strong, So a little of both. I don't know though, because when I was younger, I wasn't really doing anything to like test or prove my strength. So I don't know how much I was in there, but
yeah, I mean, so for me, when I started doing, I've always lifted. So I had an uncle that was a bodybuilder. So I would go to his house, and I'm like this 7-year-old kid that's like curling dumbbells, right? So I think I've always was active. I always was lifting weights. It's not until I think my early, because I lifted in high school, but we all lifted at the PAL. So it was just a bunch of kids just trying to get like abs, big chest and shoulders. So there wasn't a program. Nobody was following them. Yeah, that's it. Like we were in there just fooling around. And then, dudes started to see muscles, girls like muscles. So we're going to keep lifting, there was no set program that we were following. So when I first started CrossFit, I was probably one of the stronger guys because I had that baseline. The only thing I couldn't really do well was the Olympic weightlifting. Because that's technique. But when it came to bench, dead, and like squatting, I had decent numbers already. So it was just having that baseline from being a kid, being active and lifting weights. I kind of walked in, and then they were like, "Oh, this kid's pretty strong." But then you put me in the Metcon, and I was like, 7-minute window, and then I was done. So I had to start to work the weaknesses there. So some people are just more geared towards just being strong, I think, because I'll tell you this right now, like I'd rather lift weight than run a marathon or like go on a bike and bike like 50 or 60 miles or something like that. I don't think I was designed to do long distance endurance sports. Like I'm just a fast, twitchy, explosive guy, and I'm good within like a 10 to 12-minute window of like max effort. And then I want to chill out and sit somewhere. So it's like when I hear you talking, kind of reminds me a lot of myself. Because I just naturally had a knack for like lifting weights. I mean, if collectively, I think you're a lot stronger than I am, but I mean, that's because this is what you do, you know what I mean? So for me, it's just, I'm just trying to stay, functionable and, gas station ready, as I like to say, because, my job at the drop of a dime, I have to, perform a task, and I want to be in peak position, peak physical shape to be able to do that. So when like just listening to you just reminds me a lot of myself, just kind of like doting around in the gym and then just figuring out like, oh shit, I'm kind of strong. I don't want to stick with this. So I mean, I think Frankie can probably attest to the same thing. Frankie's a pretty strong guy himself over there.
Yeah, gas station ready. I like that.
Gas station ready, kid.
Josh Bryant. Yeah.
Got to be ready, bro.
2 a.m. You're filling up the gas tank, and some guy comes over to you drunk as hell, trying to, you never know, and I kind of like what you talked about, the mind, it's like, well, in high school, I was like 150 pounds senior year, like McLovin looking motherfucker. So, I definitely wasn't strong, but I think that mental mindset, times 10 for me, where, especially when, when we playing college football and then getting into powerlifting, was just that mental aspect of picturing myself always on the platform, picturing like if I had a heavy deadlift day on Friday, I was thinking about that like the Friday before, you know what I mean? And keep like replaying that like a script in my head. And like, that powerful positive image of achieving it before it happens. Kind of like how Brian Shaw on there and Eddie Hall, a lot of the big lifters, you know, that psychoanalyst game. But what years were you in? What year did you graduate high school? Were you in high school?
I graduated high school 2006. So 2002 to 2006.
So when you were doing I was kind of laughing, like I was just doing
Oh.
legs. What were you looking at, like program wise, or kind of were you following anybody, or you kind of just reading magazines, or at that time
no.
bodybuilding.com?
Like,
Yeah, because back then
just
that's like
go in
Muscle
there.
and Fitness mag and stuff like
Right.
that. It wasn't really,
'Cause
internet wasn't that big then.
I'm picturing you like in the gym, at the high school gym and stuff, and then like going into CrossFit, and then like actually following a program and doing more than just legs, you know?
yeah, no, there was no program. I had no introduction even to like, there was Muscle and Fitness era, but I wasn't even looking at that stuff either. It was just like, in my head, I need to lose weight or get in shape or whatever. And the gym is the place to do that. So I was just like that person that like go to the gym and just wander around and look at the machines and like, oh, what's this one? I'll try that, I guess. And then,
Was there anybody was there any athlete that you wanted to like look like or be like? Was there any kind of, was there some kind of motivation outside of just like, I mean, not wanting to have big shoulders because like, you only did lower body. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Well, at that point, if we're still talking about like high school years, that was still like, I didn't even really have any interest in being an athlete or anything, like I wasn't trying to do anything with my strength. I was just there to beat up on how my body looked. So I didn't have any, like, there was no guidance there or like goals or anything. When I did, so around like college years, when I started to actually take an interest in it, and I was like, okay, there's actually some, there's some real merit, to longevity and stuff, to actually learning how to lift properly and like gaining a lot of strength. I started looking at, and I started looking at a lot of, at the time, this was when like CrossFit Games had just started to get a bit of news, and
Okay.
so I started to become a big fan of Lindsay Valenzuela.
Oh yeah.
And
All right.
and various other the CrossFit chicks, as I was calling them then. And like at that point for me, so being a teenage and then college age girl, and not really getting exposed to athletics, not really getting exposed to lifting and strength culture, and really only seeing like girl culture at that point, which is like all you see in like women's magazines, and it's like TV and models and all that stuff. Like all the images of women that I'm accustomed to are just like skinny and very like feminine and pretty. So for me, when I first started seeing those, like the footage of like the CrossFit Games and those chicks, like in my mind, I was like, wow, they're so jacked and also amazing. And I'm like watching them and I'm like, I can't believe how cool it is that they look so powerful.
Yeah.
And like, that's when I started to be like, okay, I want to be like that. Like, I want to know what that feels like. And it wasn't so much what their body looked like. It was like the images, like, especially like video of like watching, the chicks at the CrossFit Games, and they would go and do like, a heavy clean or some kind of complex, and you see them struggle and you see them have that grit. And then afterwards, like, yeah, like, and they just look
super
like
intense.
like they just crushed it. I'm like, I want to know what that feels like. So
because Lindsay Valenzuela is
kind of
very, very intense.
Yes.
Very intense.
Yes. And I loved it. I was like, whatever she's feeling, I want that.
All right. I get it. So that's when the light went on for you.
That's when you is that when you made like that first time when Liefia walked into the first CrossFit gym ever, like opening those doors saying, what the hell is this place? Did you walk in because of the CrossFit Games going on and you were learning about it in school, and you're kind of just like, let me take a chance? Or was someone like, all right, you should come in and check this place out and everything? Or you kind of just went on your own and said, I'm going in?
No, I went and found it. I'd been like, watching stuff on the internet and reading stuff on the internet. And I was like, all right, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. And I was like, I want to learn how, I got to learn at least, barbell lifts and do some Olympic lifting and stuff. So where do I find that? And so that's how I ended up at the CrossFit gym, because I just, I Googled what's the closest place to me that I can learn this. And and I showed up.
So how long did you do CrossFit for? And then when did you segue into strongman? And how did you find strongman?
So I found strongman not entirely through CrossFit, but sort of. I was aware of strongman, even before CrossFit, like everyone's seen World's Strongest Man series and stuff like that. So I knew about it as a sport, but I had no idea that it existed on like the lower levels, the amateur levels, or for women until I got into CrossFit. And I think it's a good question. Now I have to remember. So it was not long. So once I started getting consistent and like interested in CrossFit, within, a matter of months, I started to sync up a lot of the knowledge and information I had about body stuff from school, with how it relates to training. So I didn't really start the journey planning to become a trainer either. But once I got really into it, I was like, okay, this, all this information that I have already intersects with this, and this is sort of a great fit. So I just kind of dove in really quickly and didn't stop learning everything. It was probably only maybe like a year or two before I saw, it wasn't very long. And then I did a couple like small CrossFit competitions, and that really got me interested in competing. I was like, okay, this is awesome. I love it.
Got the competitive juices flowing. I like it.
Yeah. And then I think so I knew sort of about strongman as I started to take more interest in training. And this was all still just like research stuff. I'm just reading stuff on the internet, trying to get a lot of information. I started researching and learning about like strongman training techniques. And again, everything I looked at kind of goes back to like the neurological basis and like, what kind of lifts give you the most activation? What kind of lifts require the most dexterity and reaction and all these things. And strongman stuff kept coming up. So I'm like, this is, I think, the more interesting part of training and strength building. I want to like learn more of that stuff. I didn't really know where to go. And then I had this moment. So I had decided that I wanted to try and learn how to do Atlas stone stuff. Again, just through research, I was like, okay, this seems really cool. I'm going to learn it. So I was looking up tutorials on YouTube for how to make Atlas stones.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to need some of these, I guess. And, those like the suggested video section or whatever.
Who'd you watch? Who were you watching?
So I think it was, I'm like trying to remember back. I think it was this girl named Talia Van Doren. She doesn't compete anymore. And it was an amateur level competition, but it was just like, I'm looking at the tutorial, I look over and I see this little screen cap and it's a woman loading an Atlas stone, and I click on it. And in the video, she's in a competition and there's people all around and they're cheering her on to do the event. And then like, that's when the light bulb went off, because I was like, holy shit, like they have a competition of this like type of events that I think are the coolest thing. And women are doing it already. And I was like, that's it. How do I do this? And then after that, I was like, so then I'm Googling like, women's entry-level strongman competition. Like, how do I do it? And I found my first competition that way, which was California's Strongest Man, which was, somewhat local. It was like an hour away from where I was. And at that time, like, I was like, okay, when can I do this? Like, let's sign me up. Sure. And like the next competition was like, it was in like a few months. And then, so I just went with it.
Okay. All right.
But everything kind of follows that league. It's like, it's not something I always knew I wanted to do, but it was like, as soon as I saw a piece, I was like, okay, that's it. I want to do that. And then I just went at it.
So was that in college or or you graduated already?
No, this is after. Yeah. So after. Yeah, in college, the best I did was like a few good training days here and there. But so this was like after college, I joined the CrossFit gym. That was like 2012.
Okay.
2011, 2012.
Okay. That's kind of around the same time where I started CrossFit, like 2013, 2012 actually, when I started CrossFit.
And then I think 2013 was when I found that competition. And then because it was March 2014 was the first contest that I did.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because we had we just had Matt Chan on here, and that's kind of like the days that you were talking about,
Yeah.
CrossFit. I think he came in second place, was it, Jay, in 2009 or 2010, something like that. And he brought up, the strongman training that he did for that games, like the log, and he's talking about the log and the stones and the sandbag and everything, and that's kind of like the time frame where you were just starting getting into it.
Yeah, they always throw in like a wild card like that. They'll throw in some kind of like odd object race or some sort, because so what they'll do is they'll have usually some kind of like triathlon, something or other, like something crazy, where it's like endurance based, and then they'll throw in something where there's an odd object. That one year they had the slug, one year they had the sled. It was just, they always do something that kind of is a wild card that don't, like, most guys won't train for. And that's why when Chan was talking about it, I thought it was pretty interesting that he was kind of preparing himself for, worst case scenario, if they're going to throw in some strongman stuff, at least, he'd be prepared. So, so with the strongman stuff, right? When did you realize that you could be like an elite competitor? That's what, because that's got my wheels turning a bit.
Yeah. So that took, again, in retrospect, not much longer, but a little bit. So that first competition I did, and that was 2014. I showed up to that contest totally unprepared, again, like, because most people, not that you have to, but most people get their introduction to the sport like through a friend. They see it somewhere, or someone kind of coaches them in, and so they're a little bit like familiar with the scene before they show up. And that was not me. Like, everything I knew about it, I had just read on the internet, and probably from terrible sources. So like everything I thought I knew about strongman was pretty much wrong. So I showed up to that contest like totally unprepared. I didn't know anybody. I got third, I think, or third or fourth in the contest. And that was a surprise even to me, because I trained for the contest. I didn't have any of the strongman equipment, really. So all of the events were all things that I had like never done before. And I trained for them just on my best like approximation at the CrossFit gym where I worked at the time. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have a yoke, so I'm going to just carry a barbell, and I don't have a stone, so I'm just going to do like a bunch of like heavy dumbbell lifts, like hold them in that position and hope that it works. So
all right, so you adapted, you improvised. Okay.
I thought I was, I tried.
Yeah.
So, but I had never done any of those events before. All of the weights seemed like impossibly heavy because I didn't have the actual like equipment. So I showed up expecting nothing from that contest. I was like, I'll probably zero everything. That's fine. But like, I need to start in order to know what it's like to compete, in order to know, like, I need to go and measure myself so I know where I'm starting. And if I'm lucky, I'll meet some people that can help me figure this out. So I went, I did surprisingly well. I can't remember now if it was third or fourth, but.
You remember how many competitors?
Not that many. I think like 5 or 6 competitors. So it wasn't like a
weight
huge
class was that?
competition. That was the women's mixed like open class. So that was all the women competitors.
And no coach or anything, kind of just Liefia going in and doing her own thing, right?
Yeah, I just was like, I'm gonna figure this out.
A lot of credit for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually a lot of people were like, wow, I can't believe you did that. Like, that seems so scary. But it was never really like a scary thing, but maybe I'm just the crazy one then, because I was like, yeah, of course, this is what you do. You just go try it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's where it also helped me to not know that much about what I was getting into, because I didn't have enough information to be scared yet. I was just like, yeah, this will be fine.
Sounds like you're a gamer.
Yes,
sounds
definitely.
Like you just show up and show out.
That's definitely.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah, I love it.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you working?
Definitely true.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Were you working at the time, or kind of what were you doing on the outside? Because you said you were working at the CrossFit gym.
Yeah. So this was at a different CrossFit gym now. I had moved to Redondo Beach, so I was working at a gym called CrossFit South Bay, and I was there. So I moved there in like, I think end of 2012, early 2013. So this is within that, like, had picked up, had been training, had started like training, had started working like as a personal trainer. And I moved to South Bay. Yeah, I think might be 2012. We're close.
All right, so if I'm looking at California on the map, right? Where is that
Yeah.
at?
It's
This is
in
SoCal, right?
it's
Pretty
all
much.
SoCal. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
SoCal. It's all within a couple hours. So
LA is
also in
like my second
California.
home, just so you know.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
got a
So
lot of friends out there.
yeah. So for non-California people, it's LA-ish. So I was working there, and that's where I was like starting to work on like, okay, I want to get into competing and stuff like that. So I was pretty local. And the California Strongest Man show is in Orange County down here.
In the
So,
OC.
in the OC.
In the OC. Were you did you go to high school in Southern California or?
Yes, but not quite here. So I grew up in Palmdale, which is it's technically in LA County, but it's not like LA. It's up in the high desert, like
okay,
kind of nowhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, just because we didn't really. I hear you. Okay.
It's funny because in January, this past January, I went to Sacramento, and I went to California one time when I was like in 7th grade at San Diego, and I went to Sacramento. And I actually was at Super Training Gym on Mark Bell's podcast, but I went to Alan Thrall's on Tame Strength.
Okay.
When I went to Sacramento, I was like, what the hell is this place? Like it was just like a smaller city of like New York City, like no beach, nothing. So I didn't really get to experience any of that. But when you were talking about the YouTube videos, I just pictured like you watching like an Alan Thrall video of him from like 2009, like, making his old school videos, because I know California has, a lot of good strongman out there and everything, and a bunch of those little random gyms and stuff. So
no, I hadn't seen his videos yet, but which they actually probably would have helped, but I think he was at that competition, which was my first contest. So Alan Thrall's actually one of the first people I met in strongman.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
he's been on the show.
Yeah, we had him on season 1. Yeah, really.
Yeah, he's really
funny,
cool.
good dude.
So that contest was like, that was my first chance to like see what it was about. And I think that was the moment. Well, I didn't know that I thought I was going to be like an elite level competitor, but that was the moment I knew that I could do it, just because I was like going into this environment of like, here are people that do know the sport. There's a lot of people there that are like high level competitors, and they can recognize it. And people were like, wow, like you did great. Like you really have no training. Like you really have no background. Like that's amazing. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm pretty good.
So what was the game plan after the competition? Did you get a coach? Did you what was the move?
Yeah, so that contest, so California Strongest Man is hosted by a guy named Scott Brangle. He runs a gym called East Coast West Coast Strength and Conditioning, which is 2 gyms, one that's out here in Orange County and the other one is in New Jersey. So there I've got
hence
both
the
coasts.
East Coast West Coast. Gotcha.
Hence the name. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was run by Frankie Corvelli.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Frankie runs the gym that's in New Jersey. So that competition was like that. He was one of the people, as well as like the other, like crew members from ECWC, where people are like, hey, you could be pretty good at this. You should actually learn some skills and do some stuff. You should come train with us. And I put it off for maybe a few weeks because I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe, but I wasn't sure that I wasn't sure that I liked everybody. And I wasn't sure if I wasn't sure if I was gonna enjoy it. So I was like, okay. But they contacted me a couple of times, like, you should come train with us. So I was like, all right, fine, I'm gonna go, find it out. And I very quickly just, I found my first lifting crew. I started showing up and training with them and just like learning everything that I could, and getting a lot of guidance. And that's where I met my boyfriend. We started dating, and we've been, he's been my partner now for 6 years. Like I just kind of fell into a very small, but like very good community. And, that fostered a lot. Like, I started learning a ton there, and it also helped that, some of the, even at that time, like, and even still now, but especially at that time, like a lot of the guys that I was training with, a lot of people in that crew, they were some of the best, still are some of the best competitors in the world. So I got to learn at the source, and not just that, but constantly compare myself to the best, which really, it elevated my expectations for myself, because I had a little bit of like, oh, wow, like maybe I could be good at this, but I was never good in that gym. Right. Mm-hmm. When I was training. So I never had this expectation of like, oh, I am good, or I'm going to be good. I was always like, I have so much to do.
That's good. I mean, shit, that's how you kind of prepare yourself for. I always say big fish, little pond, right? Sometimes you get someone in the gym that's better than everyone else that's in there. Now you kind of walk around with that complex, like I'm pretty good. So the fact that you were comparing yourself to these high level lifters kind of helped you stay humble, because you're like, I have so much work to do, that kind of kept you on track to getting to where you are now. So I think being in that environment definitely had a role in changing your life. Like you said, you met your boyfriend there, you were around such, so many great lifters. So you were able to kind of like realize, all right, I got all this work to do, but I'm around a good group of people. And I always say having a good crew lifting wise is so clutch, because they'll hold you accountable. Like I know, like if I come in and I'm having a crap day, they're gonna let me know, like, Jay, you gotta, what's going on? Get out of your head, buckle down and start to hit these lifts. And also when you have people that are that good, they're also critiquing movement and they're helping you there. So like I think being at that gym was definitely like a momentum shift for you.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
that changed my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, all of these moments are sort of serendipitous. One leads to the next, but I definitely think that specifically the gym where I ended up with and the people that I ended up training with had a lot to do with shaping my mindset on how I compete. And like, the trajectory of how I got there. I definitely would not have been as capable or as formidable without that.
Yeah.
Are you still there today?
Yeah, I still train there.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, Frankie's a good dude to that whole crew. They I know with COVID he had to shut his place down in Jersey, but he ended up opening up, like, just a resiliency opens up another spot, like a month ago. So once you said it, I was like, oh, I've been to the one in Jersey. So I'm glad that you're still training there and everything. So 6 years at the same gym, same crew still and everything? Because you said 2014, right?
Yeah. So I still train there. I mean, the crew changes a bit because life changes and people come and go and move around. But yeah, for the most part, I still have, a handful of the same people, same support network, same space to train and stuff like that. It's changed a little bit, just because the competitors have changed. Like, for example, when I started, there was, me and like, I think 4 or 5 other competitors all training for nationals at the same time. Right. So like, and I think I didn't qualify for nationals at that first competition that I did, but I was like, I did well enough. And, the coach and everybody was like, hey, you could qualify for nationals and we're going to be training to go there. Like you should come. So I did a second competition like later in the year to get ready for that. But so like at that time, even though we weren't doing like the exact same stuff, a lot of us were training for like the same competitions and sort of like at the same level. Since then, a handful of us have progressed way past that. So there's just like, differences in where the levels are and stuff like that. So how we train looks as a group isn't really quite the same. It's more like we train individually, but we're around each other as opposed to like training at the same thing.
Right.
Now, I have a question. Give me a monumental competition, because everybody has like 3 moments in their like lifting career, or like for me and Frank, like our police career, that kind of changed the direction of where your lifting career went. So give me like one. So we have your intro, right? You come in, you show up, you show out, right? And then give me like a competition that you went to that kind of changed the direction in your lifting career. Because the wheels are spinning right now for me, because I'm just trying to figure out, because I feel like you kind of just you didn't spend much time, and you kind of just you got good really quick. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out not many people have that ability to do that. So
yeah, so that's why I said before, I'm like, it's kind of a mix of both. Like I wouldn't have thought I was like a naturally strong person until I started doing it. And then, and especially knowing what I know from the analytical side, like as a coach, like, okay, this is not normally how quick this happens. So so I'm like, okay, I came packing something that I wasn't aware of. But so like that first competition, California Strongest Man, was the first. That was like what turned me on to, like, I was like, it solidified, like, okay, this is the sport for me. These are the people. This is the thing I want to be really good at. And I think I can do something with it. So I'm going to keep working on it. Then like I said, I went and did another qualifier, and I qualified for nationals later in that same year. So then I went to nationals at the end of 2014, and that was like, okay, cool. Like I've made it to this next level in this labyrinth. And I'm like, okay, but this next one's going to be really hard. Right. I'm like, this has to have been a fluke, yeah, it's up to this level, but I'm sure, okay, now I was like top top 2, top 3 in this region, but now at nationals, it's probably going to be, now it's like the whole country, it's going to be different. And one of the people actually that I had started, so at this point in the year, I had started like following other competitors, getting to know who was actually like in the sport. Cause before that, I really had no clue. And one of the people that I followed pretty closely, one of the people that I followed really closely was Brittany Diamond.
Hey, friend of the show.
Yeah. Right. And I don't actually know if she knows this. I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
Dimes.
But I watched everything she did for that year, because I was like, and she was one of the most, she was one of the most athletic strongman competitors that I could see, and that I was exposed to. So I watched everything she did, and in my mind I was like, all right, this one. And there was another one, which I don't know how much you follow strongman, but there was a strong woman named Alana Casey. And at the time she was still like a level above us, but she was sort of like, she was like the original and reigning champ. She was the Lindsay Valenzuela of strongman.
Okay.
Right? She was like the reigning strongest girl in like the middleweight division.
Gotcha.
And so I would like followed everything she did, and I was like, I would just love to be that strong. And then I would follow Brittany, and I'm like, okay, she's really good. I need to figure out how to like be like that. And going into my first nationals, I was like, I'm definitely going to get smashed, but again, I'm going to learn and it's going to be okay. And then I was competing alongside Brittany, and and probably I forget what the event was now, but there was at one point where like I started to rank like, 1 or 2 or 3 events into the contest, and I started to see like I wasn't that far back. And I think I was like close to some of her like times and performances. And then that was actually one of the things that I was like, okay, I think I can actually like do this.
like I'm here now.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, great. And I don't remember actually where I finished. I think like 10th or 11th or something like that in nationals, but it didn't matter like the performance. It was like I saw myself in the mix with the other good competitors and the people that I had sort of like, I viewed them as so far away, and I realized that I was gaining on them, and I was like, okay, I can make do of this.
Yeah, that'll put some pep in your step. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's it's always interesting when you hear stories like that, like people watching other competitors and then being on the same competition floor and then noticing that there's not that much of a difference between this person that I've been following and me. And I think that's when the switch kind of goes on, and then it's either kill or be killed at that point, because it's okay to have an admiration for somebody, right? But let's be honest, if I'm showing up somewhere, I'm trying to win. I don't compete for fun. All right. I'm not showing up and, potentially risking injury just so I can have quote unquote fun. I'm trying to win. So when you walk onto a competition floor and you realize like, hey, I'm in the same realm as these people, that's when you start to see the blood in the water. I mean, now over the years, did you compete against Brittany, and was it like almost like, I don't want to say a rivalry, but was it something that like you looked forward to and like you knew that if Britt was at this competition, you had to bring your A game, because it's like, for me, it's like magic. It's like Magic and Bird, right? So like those guys went head to head all the time, right? And they have a great respect for one another, but they try to take each other's heads off every single time they got on the court. Was it like that with some of these other like elite competitors?
Yeah, definitely. So Brittany was just like the first one. Like she was the first one that I followed and like I knew of. Like she was the first like strongman athlete that I was like, I recognize her. I know what she can do. And then after that, I started, so then I feel like when I went to that nationals is when I actually got in the mix socially, like started talking to other strong women and started to like understand more about the competitive field. But also at that time, it got really competitive. So by the following year, 2015, and just for like frame of reference, I think, I'm probably wrong now, but it was only maybe 4 to 5 years. I think 2010 was the first women's division at nationals. Maybe don't quote me on that, but somewhere around there. So at this
In
point,
that realm,
2014, 2015, we're still talking about like the introduction of like the women's classes is still relatively new. So the pool was gaining traction really quickly, and it got really competitive. And there started to be a handful of competitors that I was like, yeah, I was making a hit list in my mind, definitely.
See, that's what I like to hear. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
Because why not be
you're not
the
a
best?
competitor if you're not, right? Exactly. Why not be the best? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like no real competitor competes for fun. You compete to win.
Yeah. And there was, I think, so kind of building on the different moments. So after that, nationals was the first one that I was like, okay, I can compete at this top level. Like I can get to the best. And then I think, so I'm missing something in between 2015. I don't remember. So 2016, I earned a qualifier to the first in a long time World's Strongest Woman. So they had done a World's Strongest Woman show like way back when it had been gone. And now with like the resurgence of women in strongmen, they were like bringing that show back. So
and where was this competition at?
That was in UK.
Okay. All right. So you got to travel.
Yeah. So that was one. And I went and I did the qualifier, and I was like surprised that I made it, but I was like, all right, let's do it. And that was the next big moment, or like final moment in that like ability to see myself at that next level, because now I was going to be competing against, this is an open weight, like women's competition. So all the best in the world. And some of the people like that I had been following that are, like it was my first time competing against Kristen Rhodes, and Kristen Rhodes was like, it's like the Michael Jordan of strong woman, like she had won everything for a decade. So like, that contest was definitely sort of a big one, because going into that, I was like, okay, this is not just, can I be pretty good or can I compete with the best in my class? This is like, can I compete with the best in the actual world? And like the people who have sort of like superhuman abilities. And going into that competition, I was like, all right, I can see what I can do. And I held on.
Now, do you have like a mantra, like something that you tell yourself before you go out there and compete? Because it seems like you're not fazed by much. You seem like you're mentally strong more so than physically strong. Because half the battle is, all right, yeah, you're gonna have genetics, you're gonna put the work in the gym, but the greats are made in their, it's all in the mind, right? So you got to have that killer mindset, that Mamba mentality, which I like to touch on a lot. And I mean, it's just, I want to dive into the head of an elite competitor. Is there something that you have in your mind, or like, is there a mantra? Is there something on the wall that you look at every single day? Like, what drives you to be you? What drives Liefia to be Liefia when Liefia steps out on that competition floor?
That is a good question. So, and I think that the answer is that it has changed over time.
Okay.
Like what motivates me to compete and what I envision when I'm doing it now is very different actually from how it was when I started.
Let's go through the progression of that.
Yeah.
Like, so when, because when you started, it was just like, hey, I'm just trying to do this. And now you realize, like, all right, well, I got a little steam behind me. I'm starting to make some headway. So how does it change from beginning to current?
I think
Liefia, for that twist, like what Jay said, was an excellent question. Because I was going to say, you're kind of like a superhero where each rep you do and every competition you do, you get stronger and stronger and faster and faster. So it's like, I'm picturing you doing the first rep and it's like, all right. And then all of a sudden, like, I just saw that video, 395, and it was like, each rep, boom, boom. I'm like, is this girl going to go 10, 15 reps? Like, let's go. What's going on here? And then, so each rep you're doing, but it's like what Jay just said was a perfect question. It's like, kind of like that mental health aspect of really how you prepare and how it makes you of who you are. You know what I mean? Like how your confidence, even the ego, the mental health wise, like how you prepare mentally. So
I think that. So, and that's a great direction, because that ties into a lot. And it gets, I'm sure you don't mind, but a little bit darker. Because I
let's do it.
definitely, when we go back to, I'm talking about all those moments where like, when I got into lifting and I was like, oh, this is fun. I like the way it feels. I like being strong. I like learning all of that stuff. But emotionally, the reinforcement that I was getting from lifting, and this is something I think I found most people in the strength community resonate with, is it was an outlet for my pain. It was, an easy way to deal with, in retrospect, some of it was avoidance, but also just kind of like soothing a lot of the, emotional and internal turmoil that I had. And I don't really know how else to describe that, but I think everyone that lifts understands it. When you just go in, you're boiling, you're raging, or you're hurt, or whatever it is. And to have that like really intense physical expression, you're like, okay, I just feel better. And for me, it was a lot about like feeling autonomous, feeling the ability to like take control of physically my body, but also like my mind, this idea that like I can make myself into something else. I'm not stuck with who and what I am. I'm not what has happened to me or where I've been. I'm who I decide to be right now. And like lifting and competing, that's the thing that helped me learn that lesson. And that's what the like psychological reinforcement of was every time I'm going in the gym and I'm getting stronger, or I'm going to those competitions and realizing like, okay, I can do this. Like it was reinforcing this model in my mind that like, I can choose, right? I can choose how I want to be. Like, I want to be strong. I want to do these things. Like I can. And some of that gamer mentality was kind of dark in the beginning, because I had, there's a lot of times like going into an event or something where I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can do this. And for me, it was helpful to tap into some thinking that I had had in the past where I had already known what it felt to be totally hopeless. I had already known what it felt like to feel like I had literally like no reason to live and nothing valuable about myself. So there was a lot of this, well, like, what do I have to lose? And I'm like, and even if it wasn't in that moment, I could channel back to it and go like, okay, I know what it feels like to feel like I'm a failure, or to feel like I'm not, valuable. So if I lose or it doesn't work out, like, it's not going to be like rock bottom's not scary, because I felt like I'd been there.
You've been there.
Right. So I was like, all right, fine. Or, I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt as bad as some other things have. So like, let's do it. I can do it. I can handle it. I don't know if that's a healthy way, but that's where I was like, in the beginning. And then over time, as I actually got, more reinforced with like my own ability and started to get a little bit smarter about how I trained and stuff like that, the challenge of competing became less about like proving my worth and proving that I like could do something, and more about like proving my skill, like proving that I could do it a certain way if I chose to. So then it just started to get more interesting that way. Yeah, sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, no. So just from me listening to you, just from this, no, not at all. Just from this interview alone, I can see there's been huge progression in your life. And because you have a very calming spirit. That's the one thing I'm getting from this interview. I don't know if you were always like this, but you have a very calm way about you. And so people that are very calm usually have a great story, because people aren't always like that. So when you get somebody who's in control of their emotions, I think at one point or another in their life, they were a person who didn't have control of that, and probably have been through certain things that would make other people either give up or quit on life, or on certain situations. And so listening to you talk, right, you're very, very soft spoken, and it, like, the way you speak and the way you lift just doesn't coincide. It's like you're two different human beings. So it's almost like you transform when you get out there and you start lifting, and you turn into this like Frankie was saying, like this superhero, being able to channel these energies, right? So whatever tumultuous stuff that you had going on in your life, you were able to channel that. and redirect that energy in a positive light. A lot of people that go through tumultuous things in their life have an option. And I love that you said that you had a choice, right? You have an option to take that energy and use it for good or bad. Like in my life, I've had a lot of friends that they were really good at being shitty people, or they were really good at taking their energy and putting it out in a negative light. And if they would have just took that energy and put it towards something positive, I think the outcome of their life would have been 1,000 times different. So the fact that you were able to channel these hard times and put it in put it in the gym and just like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? I've already seen the worst. I've already been through hell. So, me going through a little bit of suffering for it, which is just a moment. It's just a moment in time where you got to, you feeling the burning of these reps and so on. But your ability to fight through that, I think that's why you are as great as you are, because you took time to identify the tumultuous things that happened in your life, and you redirected that energy in a positive light, and it shows in your demeanor, it shows in your career. And I think this is what this podcast is all about, like being able to navigate through life's ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and coming out on the opposite end victorious. I think a lot of people need to hear this out loud, because while you're on your journey, no one's ever going to really tell you out loud, hey, you're doing a great job. You might once in a while hear it, but reinforcement of that is key, especially for people like us who have been through things, and we often get caught up in the stuff that we went through. And you don't even realize like that you've made this progression until you kind of look back and say, oh shit, I'm a completely different person than I was 10 years ago, and in a positive way. And I didn't digress. I got better. So to me, just having this conversation with you is like kind of eye-opening, because it makes me realize there's so much more that I can be doing. I should stop putting a roof on some of my goals, because you just kind of like, you show up, you show out, and here you are, this elite level lifter, but almost has like a Zen-like quality, because you're super calm. Like talking to you right now, you're just like very soft-spoken. But then I watch you lift and I'm like, who is this person? You don't like, just having a conversation with you and watching your videos, it's like night and day. I'm just letting you know that right now.
Different than you expected?
Way
No.
different. I thought you were going to be way more intense. I thought you were going to be like, like more animated, but you're very soft spoken. You have a very calming spirit. It's almost samurai-esque, I think, man. I mean, yeah. I love it. I love it because it's interesting to see the dynamic change.
Yeah, no, I don't get that a ton. I mean, I have gotten that, like, I have been told plenty of times that I'm not like super reactive around lifting. Like when I'll go and do an event, it's like incredibly aggressive. But then it's like, once I'm done, I'm like, okay, I'm done now.
You know how to shut it off. Some people can't shut that off. Yeah. Like that is the hardest thing to do, to be on like 10 and then take it down. So like for Frankie and I, like, we're police officers. You could be sitting at a lull like this, and then something will happen, and then you got to turn it up to 10. And some people can't get to 10. Some people just be sitting at like 2, and then they go into a call that requires you to be at a 10, and you're still on 2. You got to learn how to be able to manipulate that. And that is a great quality to have. That's why I say you're a gamer. And I don't know, have you always been like this?
Too. Well, like I said, I don't, you mean like my personality, like how we're talking now? No, like you said, like a lot of my, whatever it is now that I have, like confidence, my that calm, which is, I think it's funny that you say that, because I don't consider myself very calm, but
really,
yeah, like you said, it comes from, not having that. And yeah, I think it definitely, it came from like a lot of concerted mental effort to become that way, right? To learn how to not be so reactive, to not allow my emotions and traumas and all those things like dictate who I was, to gain control of it, and just to decide, how I want to be, how I want to react, how I want to act. And a lot of that ability, like you're talking about, like going from the 2 to the 10, like that ability to to hit peak arousal and utilize it. A lot of that also, the ability to reach that peak level requires you to conserve the energy and use it when appropriate. So like that lesson for competing of like, like you said, some people can't turn it off, some people always up, like that's something that I've learned and then been able to like utilize. I think that's one of the things that's not totally unique, but one of the areas that I excel at in competing that allows me to do what I can do, because I'm not reacting to the arousal and competition and allowing it to like lead me. I'm not letting myself get overly hyped up. Like I'm containing it and controlling it and deciding like when to use it.
Oh, I love it. This is aces. I need stuff like this because I'm still learning. I always say I have a lot of shortcomings and I'm trying to become a better human being every single day. And one of the things I had to learn because as a child, I was a very reactive human being. And I constantly was getting in trouble as a kid because someone would do something and it's like Jason was on them, slapping somebody or doing something crazy because I was a reactive human being. And as I've gotten older, with maturity comes wisdom. For most people, sometimes maturity doesn't really bring wisdom with
if
others.
You're listening, but it does.
Yeah. Exactly. So because I think some people just don't get it. And I had to learn, like, I just used the people around me. They were my examples. And I just saw how being a reactive human being can put you in a very, very dangerous space. And, and then you can make a decision that would scar you forever. And instead of slowing down, detaching yourself from it, and then looking at the possible repercussions of this particular reaction, I started to be like, all right, Jay, you got to get walk into a situation, have your head on your shoulders, make sure that you know exactly what's going on, and do not respond from a place of emotion, because you're going to do something that you're going to freaking regret. And once it's done, there's no undoing. And if there is some undoing, it's going to be either really expensive or you're going to have to spend some time with some bars and some cement blocks around you. So I had to learn how to do that. And I'm still learning how to not be reactive. And that is an extremely hard thing to do, because human beings are emotional creatures. We just kind of respond from places of emotion for no reason, or that we'll just perceive something to be, disrespectful. And it's all something that you can conjure up in your head. Someone to say something and then you just take offense to it. And you're like, well, what did you just say to me? And the next thing you know, that person goes up, then you go up, and now you're at a head. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you're able to, and you say it so scientifically too, like the way you articulate, how you do what you do. It's like anybody who listens to this podcast is going to take so much from this particular episode. Because if you're really listening, like I know right now, I'm going to probably, after this interview, I'm definitely going to like research some more ways to control emotional reaction and learning how to channel my energy in a positive light. Because I feel like I'm pretty good at it, but I don't know what the hell it is that you do, but you need to teach me what you do so I can get to that level, that Zen-like level up there.
Well, I think a lot of things have helped, and it's taken me many years to get from where I was to where I am. And I'm definitely still on the path. I'm still working on it. And there's a lot of things, including lots of therapy. So don't discount that at all. I didn't do it all on my own.
Absolutely.
But the main thing, the biggest change, like the biggest life-changing realization in my mental health and emotional health, was realizing that I am not my thoughts, that I'm not my feelings. Right? Or I said before, it's like this realization that I'm not what I have been before, or, I'm not my mistakes. I'm not the things that have happened to me. I'm not the accumulation of things around me that I couldn't control. Like I can decide at any moment to be different or a better person. And I'm now that person.
Yes.
And so it was like, for me, it was not about learning that I needed to contain or control my emotions. It was that I actually needed to like sit with them and listen to what they were, because most of my difficulties in the past with being overreactionary, with being emotional, with being all those things, came from me not wanting to hear those thoughts, like not wanting to actually sit with my real feelings. Like I was running away from stuff, and
which we all do.
works for, everybody eventually, but you
does
can't
it.
outrun it forever, right? So
Yeah.
eventually it comes back to fuck you up. So
Yeah,
it's
true.
like,
No.
in my mind, it's very much like I have this. So this is actually really fitting because you guys is called the labyrinth. And I have like an image in my mind. It's not quite a labyrinth, but it's like a forest. Like the inner parts of my mind are like a dark forest, right? And most of the stuff happens outside and where the light and the comfortable things are. But like in the middle of that dark forest, like I don't really know what's in there, right? I know it's bad stuff. I know it's where we keep all the scary stuff that I don't really want to look at. You know, and a lot of stuff that I choose not to think about. But the reality is that like at some point, like I have to go in there, right? Like you have to go because I'm still containing it, right? So if there's like a beast that lives in the middle of this forest, at some point it's
the Minotaur, Frankie, the Minotaur kid.
Yeah. So it just finally became a point where I was like, all right, I have, like, I can't outrun this stuff. I have to face it. So realizing that like I have to face all of the crazy, fucked up, weird thoughts that I have, all of the doubts, all of those negative emotions, like I have to face them. But it doesn't mean that just because I have them or because I have those thoughts that like that's who I am.
Yeah. Oh, you're awesome, man. Frankie,
I'm about to go off.
Oh yeah, I know, because Frankie's wheels were
Is that a Minotaur on your shirt?
That's a Minotaur on his shirt. That's why I said what I said.
The responders logo made it the Minotaur. Yeah, wow. And I think you already know all this that what I'm gonna say, but we're the only creature. We're the judge, the jury, and the executioner of our own thoughts. A dog or in the pack, they get corrected once and they go on with their day. Any little thought or decision we make, will hit it 1,000 times harder. And a negative thought is 3 more times powerful than a positive thought. So
yes,
sitting with those thoughts and just going through everything you just talked about was like, the gym was like a coping mechanism and a therapy, in the beginning, of course. And then every day, like you talked about, it's a practice, and every day we're learning, and it's not going to be easy. Every day is a battle, and sitting with those thoughts and then able to control at least a few of them and realizing that, like I was going to say, like, Liefia walks into the movies, the movie theater, the movie plays, and it's her life and her experiences. Now, at what point does she finish the movie and keep going to where she is today until she says, you know what, screw this, I'm leaving, and I want my ticket back because I'm not going to sit there and watch this movie, But the deep dark forest, there's a story with King Arthur and the Knight's Table, and at one point they have to go get this Grail, and they're always traveling together, and they all agreed that they're all going to go separate into this forest that they've never been to before, and they all have to. It's just no other way. Because you have to grow, and they all go separate, and they find that the deepest part of the forest, and they find that bliss, and that bliss is finding out really who you are and how where you are today. But when you're able to go to that deep part, and it's not going to be easy, it sucks. Being a year sober is the hardest thing that I ever done, and it's still going to be the hardest thing I ever done. But I'm aware of the triggers, I'm aware of the thoughts, I'm aware of what I'm going to say, what people are going to say. And even as a cop on the street, when you go through that dark place, you're able to relate with a lot more people out there, but you're also able to catch and see a lot more things. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot of practice. And, I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's not easy. But going to that dark forest, which I love, and coming out, that's just like a sigh of relief where, that rock bottom. And it's funny you said that because I've been there too. And I always think to myself, though, it could always be worse. No matter what, like rock bottom, there could always be that one little level that you didn't even know existed, that it could always be worse. So it's kind of funny how you said that suffering part in the beginning. You're kind of like, and you even admitted it, that like not the healthy part. And I've been there too. But just to like the way you were then to where you are now, it's kind of like, we're all, on this podcast and whoever's listening, forever growing. And that's how you got to look at it. Like you might go back to the dark forest again and make that quick right turn, and you didn't know that part of the woods was there. You know what I mean? So I'm really happy that you brought that up.
But we also have to know what it looks like, because what we find out is like a lot of, in my case, it's like, yeah, there was a big scary monster in there, but it was not unbeatable. And, the majority of what was holding me back from crossing that forest was just the big scary image in my mind, this like anxiety about like, well, what is it and how bad is it going to be? Where in reality it was like, oh, okay, actually it's all conquerable. And it wasn't so bad. And I was just afraid of, it was a myth, you know, it was like the stories of the monster had gotten bigger than the actual monster itself. In reality, it was conquerable. And that was one of the things that like, where you're like, okay, if you look back in retrospect, and this has happened to me a lot in lifting, where it was like, I set a goal for the future, you know, either something positive or like, let's say it's battling this invisible monster. Either way, you set it up in your mind as like being very difficult or even impossible to do. And then once you actually conquer it, you're like, okay, well, I thought that was impossible, but now it's not. So what else do I think is impossible that's actually totally doable? Yeah, like what's different about my perspective? The reality is that like I set the limits, you know, and I think that that's really transformational.
Liefia, I like it.
Let's go.
Very insightful human being.
Let's do it.
I think a lot.
She took me to church this morning, man. I'm
yeah, this is another gospel, Jay.
I wasn't expecting this, man. This is great. It's got a great way for me to start my day on a high note, actually.
Speaking of the forest and everything, what's your next travel through the forest, you know, kind of going through the rest of the year and everything, competing or just life-wise, you know? Because there's a lot of people in the forest right now that could use that flair, or they could use that little you know, and another thing I wanted to say is that you admitted, which I love, is that you couldn't do this alone. You know, you said the therapy, and it takes a lot of work, and that's, you know, what the podcast and everything is about, is comes to a point where you got to surrender, and you need to, you know, on that hero journey, you know, you go through the little forest or the labyrinth, and you meet people on the way that really, you know, give you those little tools, like as a myth, you know, like, you know, here's the sword, here's the shield, here's the flare, here's this, and you use it on the way, you know, for the right moments and the right time. So kind of what's where are you going through your forest now, you know, for the end of the year, or your next journey?
Yeah, I really like the analogy, because it is very true. Like none of this can be done alone. And that was also, I think, part of my difficulty in my past, was that I did think that I had to do everything on my own. And part of that was, you know, I had really deep trust issues, and like learning how to actually let people help me was a hard lesson. And, you know, trusting people enough to have that team. So in competition, you know, we talked about that, like definitely I wouldn't have made it to where I was without, you know, all of the information, all of the guidance, all of the support from the people around me. And some of those are the same people that helped me mentally and emotionally get to where I am as well. But I think, so where I am with the forest, so I'm through the first forest. Okay. You know, I conquered the first scary forest that I was avoiding, and found out that the monster wasn't that bad, and that I'm stronger and more capable than I thought. So the confidence from those interactions, like I'm carrying that around with me. Now I have this, you know, I have my backpack full of tools. I got the sword from one person, and I got the shield from someone else, and I got the magic from the wizard, you know, and I'm just carrying it all around. Okay. So, you know, I'm in a place where I feel very confident, you know, in who I am and my abilities. And I want to still keep challenging that, but I don't know exactly where it is. I'm kind of looking for the next forest. Competition wise, I'm not through with competing, but at the moment it's weird. Competitions aren't frequent or anything. Yeah. All of my original plans for competing this year have been upended and changed around. So, I will still be competing, hopefully again someday, but I don't know yet when that is. I was potentially going to compete a couple times this year. Those got canceled or moved, or things came up that I couldn't deal with. So I'll probably be competing next summer. If things go well, I'll be doing the Stones of Strength World Championship. That's in Norway. And that'll probably, I think that's in like June or July. So that'll probably be my next opportunity to compete, barring more world disasters. And outside of competition, I don't know. I've, you know, alongside my competition career, I've built a training business. and coaching a lot of athletes, and that's going really well, but we're just kind of continuing to progress and see what comes up next. I don't really know.
All right. I like it.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. We don't know. And
We don't know.
That's part of the journey. We don't know, but you got the tools.
Don't know.
Yeah, but we know we got a lot of tools.
Exactly. And Jay was saying how you're so soft spoken, and I used to be a big World of Warcraft player, so I kind of picture you as like this female, like this badass female paladin that's like, a healer, like able to heal, but at the same time always ready, carrying that big ass mace, like ready to throw down at any point. And again, it takes a lot of practice to get to that point. Before we wrap up, we have a few more questions for you, so the listeners to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Of, who you are and Inside Your Labyrinth. So, favorite movie, if you had to pick one or two. I know it's really on the bat.
I need to hear this, Liefia.
So my favorite movie is a movie called Labyrinth.
Oh, are you serious? Wow. Yeah,
I'm really
that's a first,
serious.
Frankie.
I'm really
That's a
serious.
first, Frankie.
Why it's funny. Do you guys know that movie?
That's old
It's
school.
a weird one.
That's an old school one, right?
Yeah, it's from 1986.
Yeah.
Before I was born.
All right, listen,
yeah.
just so you know, right? I was 4 in 86, bro. So,
I
Frankie's like,
wasn't
that's an
even
old
there.
school one, right? I was 4 in 86, dude.
I was just a
Jeez
sperm. I was just a
Louise.
sperm chilling,
Yeah.
I know.
It was before all of our time. But yeah, so if I had to pick one, that's probably my favorite movie, which
Let's
is
go.
always a weird thing. But actually, and for a lot of reasons that way, like so have you seen that movie?
I've never seen it. I'm gonna go probably
Okay.
watch it this weekend.
It's weird, and in my experience, everyone who's seen it as an adult is like, "What the hell did I just watch?" So I don't know. You can decide. But that movie has a lot of lessons in it. Like part of that reason that's my favorite movie is because it was my mom's favorite movie. So she showed it to us a lot when I was a kid. So it was like one of the first movies I saw as a kid and watched it like all the time. So I like grew up on it.
Okay.
And when you watch it, like it's silly and everything, but like there's quite a lot of lessons in the movie, along a lot of like what we just talked about. Like this girl has to go into the labyrinth and face the unknown challenges and dangers to get what she needs, and finds out that it's like all conquerable. So yeah,
I get it.
I promise that was just a good coincidence. But when you guys contacted me, you're talking about the name of the podcast. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's funny to talk about that.
That's actually really funny. Favorite, if you have this for the rest of your life and recovery is there, one main lift and one accessory lift to do every single day, what would it be?
Forever,
but recovery is there, so you don't have to worry about waking up the next day. But it's the same one every day.
So the same lift every day, and I only get one
main lift and one accessory movement.
One accessory lift.
Well, I don't know what counts as an accessory. Then can I have deadlift and press?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you like.
If that's what
I
you're
feel like
going
your
with.
shoulder to overhead game is insane. So I kind of knew she was going to say some kind of pressing of some sort.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of deadlift and what kind of press? Like what kind of bars we talking?
What kind? Oh, probably.
Equipment-wise.
If I can do chance equipment, then deadlift, we're just talking about a barbell. But if we're doing press, then my favorite is probably log.
Yeah, I was going to say she's going to go log, bro.
It's my favorite.
I like it. One meal to eat every single day for the rest of your life, healthy or unhealthy. What are you going
with? Grilled cheese sandwich.
Grilled cheese.
Soup.
First one, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
probably.
Grilled cheese.
Anything on it? Bacon or a tomato? Or just plain?
No, but you got to dip it in the tomato soup.
In the soup.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Dip it in the soup.
Right.
Gotta. I like it.
I can't have any of that stuff, so go ahead.
You
There's too much going on there for me.
You come to New York. It's me and Jay. We're chilling. We're like, yo, check this out. We lift up a tarp. It's a time machine. You're how Liefia is now, who you are now. You're able to go anywhere you want. 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, as you are now. Where are you going?
I feel like this is such a common imagination question. I've not thought about this before.
We're in the labyrinth. You don't know what's coming.
Not considered. I think I don't know. I think I would want to go future.
We've heard that before, and it's funny because I said the past, and then like it.
Oh,
just
did you say
skips,
past?
It skips the mind and it goes to the future. But who
Oh,
else?
I
Someone
said
recently
any
said.
moment in time.
Somebody else said it.
that.
I just can't think of who said future.
Oh, well, if it's only past.
I think it was Janae. Janae
Yeah,
Kroc, I think, might
I
have
think
just
it
said
was
it.
Janae Kroc,
Or she said she would want to stay where she is right now. But if you want to go to the future, you can. How many years in the future?
Okay, I can go to the future.
Yeah, how many
Well,
years?
that's what I said. I don't know. I mean, yeah, if it's not too
future's too risky for me.
I think I would just stay here. Like if I'm more interested in the future than I am in the past. But the future is also terrifying because you know, what are we going to find there? And do we want to face it? I don't know. Do we want to face it before we have the tools?
That's
I don't
the thing.
know.
Right. You go in the future, you might have not gotten the orb that you would have gotten in 5 years to go, 20, 30 years in the future.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I don't know. Very scary.
We'll go with the future. If you think of it,
we'll go with the future. Can I ask a question? Do you have a favorite book?
Do I have a favorite book? I don't know if I have a single favorite book.
All right, give me 3. Give me your top 3. Normally I ask music, but for some reason I want to know what you're reading.
This is hard. Well, I don't have, so a lot of my favorite books are not fiction, which is not that unstrange, but I feel like most people would talk about favorite books or fiction. But if I have a favorite fiction book, it might be 1984. It's very interesting.
I'm gonna write that down. 1984.
There's also a book, which this one's gonna feel very nerdy, but it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's a nonfiction book, but it explains a lot about our evolved stress response and how emotional stress dictates and affects our physical state.
Gotcha.
And so that one is probably one of my favorites, not so much to read, but just because the information in that was really transformational and it comes up all the time.
Okay.
Now I'm blanking. There has to be some other book that I really like.
If it's too tough, then I'll take the 2 because the second book seems like something I should be reading. Stress mitigation.
That's definitely one I suggest to everyone read it if you have the interest.
I'm definitely gonna look into that. So.
And I don't know, I didn't try to make it sound extra nerdy. It's very plain clothes science. They do a really good job of explaining it in terms and analogies that are really easy to understand.
Okay. So, great. Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna pick up that book.
Hear all this.
Thank you.
Last question. Someone to hang out with. They could be dead or alive. Who would you want to hang out with?
Anybody.
Drum roll.
Anybody.
I don't know. Anybody dead or alive? David Bowie.
Yeah. David Bowie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
I wasn't expecting that from you, but
something interesting. Well, he's in that movie. That's my favorite movie. So
see, now I gotta watch this. I'm probably gonna watch this thing tonight. Now,
Jay, you might be a little. It's old school.
All right,
you should be warned. It's a musical, and it's
it's a musical,
and most of the characters are Muppets.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'm good. All right, no, thank you. All right, Muppets. Yeah.
It's a Jim Henson movie.
You know what? I'll give it 10 minutes, and if it settles in the brain, then I'll watch it.
It's weird. It's weird. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll give it a shot. It's worth giving it a shot. All right. I think
if not that one, you should watch Neverending Story.
Neverending Story.
That's my second favorite, tied for first movie. You haven't seen that either?
Nope.
No, I never have either.
Frank, you haven't seen that either?
No.
Oh, it's very good. But also from late 80s, maybe early 90s.
What's the premise of that movie?
It's similar. There's a small hero who has to go against a big, unforeseen, all-powerful source of evil. it's a kid he's actually like reading a story, but he gets like absorbed into the story. And there's this like cosmic force called the nothing, which is sort of symbolic of like sadness, negativity, and it's like taking over the whole universe. And he's like the chosen hero that has to go and like
hero journey. Yeah,
I guess I got to check that out too. All right,
I'm gonna
go with the never-ending story first.
Strange people and stuff.
That's not the one with the big ass white dog, is it?
Yes.
I've seen it. Okay, all right. I've seen that. I was a child when I saw this.
I know you're talking about.
That's Falcor, and he's not a dog. He's a luck dragon.
Okay, see, and the whole time as a child, I thought that was a big ass Labrador. Okay, all right, well,
but it does look like that.
It looks like a dog.
Yes, and that's also based on a book, The Never-Ending Story, which is a good book. So we can make that one my number 3.
All right, I'm gonna watch The Labyrinth tonight.
There you go.
Hopefully,
there's a lot of fantasy elements in there.
Yeah, I thought you would say Donnie Darko too.
Donnie Darko. Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Yeah, that's another that just came to my mind in my Labyrinth, another old school one. So great movies out there to if you can bear with it and get through it, it's worth it.
I'm gonna try this Labyrinth tonight. We'll see. I'll text you later about this, Frankie.
On that note,
my mind.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and going through your Labyrinth with us. It was a great journey and a great way to get the week going. We really appreciate it. Everyone knows my name is Frank. You know where to find me at reps_4_responders. And Big J, where can they find you at?
I am the Real Jumpman J. You can find me on Instagram at the Real Jumpman J. My email should be in there too. It's j.lacayo@gmail in case you need to reach me for any particular reason. And Liefia, where can they find you?
Where can they find me? So I'm on Instagram, everybody's favorite. Leifasaurus is my personal page. And Unicorn Strength Training is my professional outlet. If people are trying to get a hold of me, either Instagram is a great place or my website, unicornstrength.com. You can contact me there.
Awesome. All right.
I love it.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. It was truly insightful for me. I mean, I'm going to dissect this podcast once we get off this, and I'm going to take some cues from you and try to get my life in order.
And if you hate the movie, just let it go. Don't worry too much.
I'm pretty sure I won't hate it. I gotta buckle down and watch this thing.
You just got to get in the right mindset. Expect it to be weird, and then you'll be okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This was a nice talk. It's nice to meet you guys.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Sorry,
Have a good one, Liefia.
More intense.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
I'm kidding.